are now in the long hiatus. No more new episodes to talk about. I can show you what I got for Christmas. Yep, one of my buddies picked this up for me. I didn't even know this had existed. So I was tickled to death. I mean, it's got decals. Decals! I honestly can't decide whether I should open this up and build her or just leave it in a nice sealed box. Maybe I'll see if I get a second one for next Christmas. Then again, can you ever have enough Impalas? Philosophers wonder. We'll set the unboxing aside for today, and instead we'll check out the other media Supernatural has done. How about the last comic story? So the first thing you'll notice about these issues is that they were not printed under the Wildstorm imprint logo. Around that time, DC Comics had disbanded the comic line and just brought everything into DC propers. So unlike the previous issues of the Supernatural comic, which were printed under Wildstorm, these were proudly printed under DC Comics proper. So the first issue says it was released December 2011, but you'll notice in here there's advertisements for October 23rd TV show, so this was probably an October 2011 release, which would place this right as Season 7 is getting started. Oh, and in case you wondered, yep, there's Batman at the back of the comic book. The final issue had a release date of May 2012 on the cover, but was really around February-ish. So we're really looking at the midpoint of Season 7, when the Leviathan have been released and are getting started and such. So the comic begins with an airplane. Our boy Sam sulking in his seat. He narrates his trip, going from the airport to Edinburgh, mentioning that he's in Stanford's student travel program. So this is a story taking place during Sam's student years, and he apparently got to visit England during one of these. What throws us off is that it says 3 years ago here, but when this released, that would have been, like I said, during Season 7. 3 years ago would have been Season 4. Sam and Cass aren't anywhere to be found. I assume this should probably be more 3 years before the pilot, which would put Sam at around freshman, sophomore-ish at Stanford. So he's visiting the library and spots a girl, and even mentions that he's expected to sit in on classes at the partner university, sort of a sharing of knowledge and culture sort of thing. Expected is not the same thing as required. So he does what any healthy college heterosexual boy will do and go hunt down the girl in the mythology and occult folklore section, because that's where all the quality women are found. He mentions that she is one really incredible, beautiful woman. And, that's where I'll admit the art style for the comic isn't really doing us any favor. So they have a bit of a meet cute, flirting a little bit. And then she goes dragging Sam Winchester off to the pub. And this part, it's kind of funny because Sam keeps talking that he is well beyond buzzed, and then muttering, "What's going on? What's going on? Why are you asking yourself this?" Like Sam has never ever flirted with a girl before, or has even conversational experiences with them, when we've at least seen evidence to the contrary, even when he was younger. Anyway, he keeps complaining about jet lag and wanting to leave this beautiful lady that he spent so much time trying to talk to. You almost expect Dean to just suddenly appear and slap some sense into him to remind him how to flirt. Anyway, in this panel, the girl named Emma reveals that, yep, she also shoots things that go bump in the night. Horrible, nasty things, the sort that when you come face to face with them, you thank God you're packing. She is a Scottish chapter of Hunters, founding member. Well, except we call ourselves Breakers rather than Hunters. It takes one to know one, Sam. So yes, Sam visits England, and within 5 minutes of being there, runs into another hunter. And yes, obviously the Season 12 British Men of Letters storyline has kind of jinxed this book, but I do like the Scottish hunters having a different term for their job. So they read about something, the reader doesn't get included on it. And again, Sam says, "That's crazy, but is it real? It can't be real. It's a fairy tale, a bedtime story." Like, bitch, you grew up with this stuff. We've read the other comic. We've seen the kind of things you've tangled with. How are you so disbelieving of some of this? Sometimes in this book, you wonder if they were aware of any of Sam Winchester's history. So she drags him out, and he hops bitch on a bike. Again, Sam acting, well, even I have to admit that he is behaving as much as a dork as Dean always accused him of. I am somewhat disappointed you're not being smoother here, Sam. So Emma drags him along to this street where a ghostly procession comes by. I do like this 2-page spread. And they're just harmless. It's just literally something the equivalent of a light show, which totally gets her and Sam in the mood. And again, the art style sometimes wants to throw you out of the story because by this point, Sam should be pretty close to fully grown, and Jared Padalecki is around 6'7", I think I read once, which means this woman has got to be about as tall as Dean, like 6'2" to 6'5", and that's just not really common. Anyway, yeah. Looks like Sam's got himself a girl one day in England. On to issue 2. Issue 2 opens with some artwork labeled Edinburgh, Scotland. I'll leave it to any Scottish viewers of mine to let me know if this is accurate at all. So Sam gets a wake-up call where Emma's waiting for him. And they go riding. So this part is just kind of funny where Emma's giving him the lowdown on what they want to deal with, and she says this place is not fit for man nor beast, and can you handle this? Sam thinks she's talking about the gun she just tossed him, but she mentions, no, not the shotgun. This, can you handle this? Following me into the heart of darkness? Or should I take you back to bed? This gets even funnier when you remember that back in the second comic arc, he was having to deal with the giant mecha demon while his father and brother fought to save him from Lilith possessing his homeroom teacher. Really, what can she possibly throw at him by now? Not to mention, in the previous episode, John Dee opened up a gate to hell in front of him, and he got to meet Azazel. So they explore an abandoned building a little bit, and uh-oh, evil dogs. It wouldn't be a supernatural comic without evil dogs in it. So they take an elevator, which is actually still working in this abandoned building, and go out and exchange gunfires with, it first looks like a normal person. They have some back and forth, and then they find out that, oh, this guy is apparently leading these demon evil dogs. Behold, the evil dog whisperer and his evil pooches. So Sam barricades the doors to the stairs to block them from coming up to him, and then Emma sets off a giant bomb. Sure. And then she apparently cannot shoot a guy standing still. They continue to have a gunfight that isn't always well conveyed by the art. Oh, bad doggies. Oh, she's got a magic bullet though. Loads it up. Sam's just having a really bad day. Really, really bad day. And then evil guy gets shot right between the eyes. Oh good. Sam's okay now. Sam ends up going back, sharing a kiss with Emma, and then he has to fly away with a cute little note from her. This concludes issue 2, and we head on to issue 3. Issue 3 opens with Sam having some PTSD flashbacks to that night with the dogs and Emma before getting a wake-up call. Turns out he got some airmail from the United Kingdom, so he goes driving off to pick it up. Turns out Emma and him set up a mailbox as a sort of personal drop point, and this is literally the first time he heard from her since he got back. Inside, she sent him some old books, a cell phone, maps of the area, train ticket, a handgun, and some photos. How is he supposed to get that in England is probably the most fantastical part about this whole comic. Anyway, cut to the airport, and he is on his way back to England with some flashback art as to the girl he's going for. Now here we're in just generic Scotland. No proper place or anything. Generic village. After 14 hours in the air, a half dozen more by rail, and 2 hours walking down a road that looked more like a driveway, he is waiting at an inn. Finally, Sam remembers he's supposed to be the smart, bookish one in the show. He picks up the books and begins to go through Emma's notes, retracing her steps, kind of like he did for their dad back in season 1. Again, he says, it was overwhelming. The clips are from all over and they span, well, decades. With the map she provided, the pattern is obvious. Coastal town, small populations, isolated bays, limited access. With this village looking more and more like an epicenter. Is that out of the ordinary for stuff that Sam has had to deal with over the years? We get some spooky monster action. Doggo, except I think this is a regular doggo, not an evil one, growling at something under a van. And then Sam wakes up. Oh, he remembers she gave him a freaking phone. So he plugs it up and gives her a call. And she picks it up. Sometimes I want to call this comic Sam being a dumbass. Well, she is acting all extra mysterious. He asks where she is and she says, "I'm at this red X on the map I sent you." So we get some shots of Sam following the red X. And then he trips and hits his head. I wonder if this is actually the start of poor soft skull Sam, of mysterious people looking out of mysterious windows. A beach! Extra mysterious. Looks like Sam was dragged off. What's going on? It's so mysterious! That may be what's going on. Let's go on to issue 4. Yep, Sam is apparently getting dragged away, then wakes up, and I'm not sure, but I think these panels indicate he hit his head again. So yes, in these comics, he hits his head in issue 3 at the end, and it starts issue 4 hitting his head a second time, so he can then wake up shirtless and pantsless. At some point you wonder if Chuck is writing fan service. Well, he's in a little trailer, totally confused because of all the concussion damage he has now. Follows up on her investigation. Has a line, "This is all really real." Again, like he's not a hunter and not dealt with this shit before. "Hey, Sam Winchester, did you think you died and went to heaven? Oh. Too soon? Just kidding, you didn't." Emma gives this whole spiel of, hey, it's not going to be like last time. No library stacks or cozy pubs. It's just killing of mythological beasties. And they have a big exchange talking about it. It is Selkies that they are talking about. Seal maidens that can remove their skin. It's said turning into humans in the process, and by putting that skin back on, they can return to the waves once more. According to this particular versions that they're hunting, the females can look like beautiful women, the males cannot transform, and so are twisted into horrible, jealous, ugly things, totally subservient to the women of their kind. We'll come back to that. So they camp out in her little trailer, apparently totally platonic. Poor Sam. And he just decides to go walking along near the coast, even though they just went over these monsters that are coming from the coast. Boy drops his gun and then sees woman doing something, and she's apparently drowning a hideous monkey creature who attempts to claw Sam's face off. Yeah, you should have dropped your gun, son. So they fight. Little bastard bites him. So Sam picks up a rock and then just proceeds to beat the thing to death. And then he's in a phone booth saying, "Listen, I know it doesn't make sense. I'll explain when you get here." What's to make sense about? You got monsters coming up from the sea. You beat one death with a rock. This is probably one of the easiest cases y'all have ever had, Sam. Anyway, yep, please, Dean, I really need you. Funny part is he says, just get to an airport. Yeah, this comic expects us to believe that this takes place shortly after the pilot, probably sometime still within season 1. And Sam not only took off without Dean knowing, but then called him to get on a flight to help out in England. I have so many questions. So Sam goes back to the hotel and evacs. There's one little funny bit I have where he's like, "I'm not checking out, but I haven't paid. I'm not paying, I'm gone. Okay, I'll pay. It just kind of amuses me that even when he's in danger, Sam may take a minute to say, yeah, well, I'll try to be an upstanding citizen. It's that lawyer training he probably had. Anyway, now he wants to get some distance between me and the coast because his first near-death experience apparently wasn't enough inspiration. And then 12 hours to Dean, figure I can stay out here 6 or 8, swing by to check on Emma. Okay, no problem, 12 hours. Hurry up, Dean. Why does he not just go stay with him on her little trailer? What? Sam, why are you sitting there cowering in the middle of nowhere like a frightened child? You are fairly badass by this point, man. Nut up and be in Winchester. Issue 5, morning comes. Sam wakes up with Dean quite angrily texting, "Where the F are you?" slept longer than I should have, and they end up finding each other. Again, you gotta wonder about the artwork because this kind of shows Dean looking a little taller than Sam. Well, maybe the artist never saw the show. So they all get caught up. They're having a bit of time in the pub. I will admit, I do think this artist ends up complimenting Dean a little bit better than it does Sam. So on this page here, we don't hear the dialogue. We just get Sam's internal monologue. He says, I can sense Dean's disappointment that I kept Emma a secret all this time. But honestly, how do you explain something like those 2 days in Edinburgh? It took me weeks to process it, to figure out what I even went through, what I even thought about it. But I give it a shot anyway. One, I don't think Dean would be that... Well, okay, Dean would be more disappointed he didn't know about one of his brother's scores, but he would still be, hey, kind of proud you got to make out with a cute chick. I mean, we are talking about a guy who refused to text Sam when he was in trouble while Sam was on a date because, Dean was the best wingman. Anyway, Sam points out, it's not so hard once you get going. I spent a good 10 minutes talking about her face, her hair, the way she smelled, her accent. Dean was patient sometimes. I don't give my brother enough credit. He just let me talk, which is exactly what I needed to do, and he didn't judge, which is probably more than I deserve. I kept apologizing for dragging him into all this. He kept deflecting until he finally got sick of me saying it. Again, this feels more like a season 8 Sam than season 1, 2-ish, where their relationship was kind of still a little cold, a little rocky. This feels almost more like a 12-year-old Sam trying to talk to his older brother than one that's an adult now. So they talk a little bit about the hunt that they're going on. Sam mentions the monsters are the males. The females do attain a human form. Quite a nice one, truth be told. Take a look around town, Dean. Count how many stunning redheads you can find. So, hey, my ideal place. So they discuss the case, their idea, and Sam's finally like, hey, why don't I take you to go see this girl? Dean's, politely says, yeah, why haven't you done it yet? What's taking you so long? So out around sundown, they get to her little trailer. Sam actually panics a minute, and Dean's like, wait a minute, where are the weapons? And then, oh, hey, wait a minute. It's nighttime. That's probably when monsters are going to attack. Oh, yep. Here come monsters. Let's pull out guns and shoot them. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, 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 bang. More banging. Oh, Emma shows up. Now we have extra pew, pew, pew. So here is where we get to what you've all probably been expecting. Emma says, one of those last shotgun blasts you heard? That was me taking out the colony mother. The colony mother? That's right, Sam. My mother. I'm one of them. The hair, it's a dye job. I'm one of them, Sam. One of the females. And now, as of 30 seconds ago, I'm the new colony mother. And then Sam proceeds to just freak out. So yeah, this is why I assume this must be during season 1, because if this had happened after season 2's heart episode, you'd probably figured he'd just have a punch card now of how many monster women he ends up with. So on to issue 6. Guess what it's going to be about? Yep, Dawn, and we proceed to have drama! Drama, I say! Sam, Dean, chat, talking to Emma, talk. Explain why exactly they're killing these things, which is somewhat questionable. Males obey the females. You gotta kind of wonder, why can't they just order the monsters to be peaceful and just have everybody get along? So apparently all this talking took the entire day. No, really. It took the entire day. It literally says dawn at the start, and then after all this chatting, the sun is setting. Well, they apparently hunkered down for a firefight. Again, if she's the colony mother, you kind of wonder why she can't just tell them all to not attack. And, oh, here they come. Monster City. Oh, wait. Turns out Emma rigged her trailer to explode in sort of a callback to the earlier hunt. So the boys didn't get to do much of anything, but, well, we all know where this is going. Poor Emma's got to be put down. So, what are my thoughts? Ironically, despite all the grief I was giving it, I would probably rank this kind of close to Rising Sun. Not as good as the best comic series, in my opinion, Origins, but right around the middle tier. For one thing, this at least generally fits in with canon until season 12 came along, but we'll just set that aside. By far, the weakest part of it is the latter 4 issues, where we basically just get a repeat of Heart. Sam finds a girl, oh, tragedy, she's a monster, she has to be put down. That, the girl next door, again, it's practically a drinking game at this point. By far the strongest part I thought was the opening bit with Sam in a foreign country ending up on a hunt. I was disappointed that they made the entire trip just 2 days. By far, I think this comic would have been much, much stronger if they had established the trip as, say, a week-long trip, with each issue being one day of the trip, and you got to see Sam experiencing what it's like hunting elsewhere and finding a passionate love. Ironically, I kind of bought Sam's relationship with Emma more than I did Madison's originally. I'll admit, I am probably due for a rewatch, and I may go back and re-review Heart for a video review. Or when you're traveling and you're in a place that you know you're not going to stay, there's just that real passionate relationship you can have with someone because you both kind of know that it's absolutely temporary, so it kind of adds that extra fuel to the fire, and you know it's going to be tragic, but part of both of you just kind of hopes maybe, just maybe, it'll work out enough that somehow you'll get to stay together. That's why I found the intense relationship between these two much more believable than I did with him and the werewolf. The characterization of Sam is a little bothersome, especially when you go back and you reread it. He acts much more like this is the first real hunt he's ever been on. Yeah, this Sam isn't nearly as experienced as the ones we've known in the show, but he should still have more of his wits about him and be less totally confused and baffled. According to the lore, this would have been right around when Sam was breaking away from his family and trying to live a normal life. That's why I really would have preferred this comic to have examined entirely a backstory to Sam during his Stanford years, because that would have been a really interesting examination for his character. Here he is trying to break away from his old life, and he's getting sucked back into it as he's trying to break away. But you know, you have that real intense emotional connection to this pretty girl. She'd be like the flip of Jessica. What always kind of worked for Jessica as the woman Sam lost was the fact that she represented the life that he idealized and was ultimately denied. Emma had the potential to be the flip of that, the representation of the life he's turning away, the sort of proto-Eileen that the show ultimately hooked Sam up with. We could have really seen a neat examination in these comics of it, but it's really kept pretty thin and just more rendered tragic in the, oh, she's a monster, I've got to kill her way, instead of the tragedy of, oh, we know our time is short and we'll eventually have to part. I'm especially kind of sad that they ended the comic with her being shot, if only because looking back at it, in the years since this has come out, I mean, just imagine that Emma had been kept alive, and what if she was the British woman of letters that we saw at the end of season 11? Instead of Tony, it was Emma that was going to get Sam. I'm not saying that this comic should have been required reading for fans of the show. If you remember, in the finale of season 11, we get about a 1 to 2 minute shot of Tony's home life that tells us a whole lot about her character before she arms up and goes to get Sam after all the times they've broken the world. A smart writer could have conveyed the entire backstory of this comic in that few minutes, like shown a shot of this college age girl with a college age Sam and a couple of other things. And the character of Tony in seasons 11 and 12 was, I always felt, very thinly sketched and not really strong. And had this story left the door open and had the writers of the show take advantage of it, I think it would have made season 12 a lot stronger, especially if Sam and this long lost love had a chance to reconnect, but then there's that undercurrent of conflict that's again pushing them away. Plus, you could have had a little love triangle in season 12 between her and Eileen, and lots of missed opportunities. Overall, it generally fits with canon. The biggest hiccup is fitting it with season 12. It's not hard to fit this with season 12. They don't clash strongly. By far the strongest clashes is Sam and Dean's characterizations. I mean, we know Dean hates flying. And heck, they have the Kurt Winchester homestead, which I like that with the motel. 3 years later, with a red truck, no Impala to be seen. Apparently, Sam was staying in a motel without Dean and took the truck. There's a few hiccups here and there that kind of make you wonder, especially if you're a big fan. But overall, I really do appreciate the effort and the ideas in this comic. Just a few little tweaks, and I think this could have easily been equal to Supernatural Origins. So as far as the Lost episode goes, it's pretty solid. And so far, that's the last comic issue they've done. No more have been released, and there's no word about any more coming out. I've got a couple of books that I haven't reviewed yet, so we'll look at those next before we resume going back and watching some of the classic episodes. See you then.